month, so
Call to order,
it is what it is, I guess.
work session of City Council meeting, January 10th, 2023. And we'll review our agenda for Thursday.
Yes, sir.
Note that we have all council present. We'll have the call to order on Thursday. Start at 5 o'clock, roll call, invocation by Reverend Chuck Carlson of the Sierra Vista Community Church, pledge of allegiance by Councilman Johnson.
My pleasure.
Thank you, sir. And then we'll go to our first item, Ms. Mesner. First item.
Yeah, we don't have to read them.
Oh, we don't have to read them.
You're just going to ask if anyone has issues with the minutes of the
Yeah,
Thank you.
after she does the motion. All right.
So does anyone have any issues with the agenda items?
Maria, did you update? I did submit one correction, but I didn't see if it was, okay, thank you.
We'll proceed to our awards and presentations. Mr. Downing will have that.
That's Miss Downey right there. So. And that's the one you go out front.
Roger that.
Yeah.
Then we'll go to our city manager report, Mr. Petrucci.
Thank you, Mayor McCom, members of the council. We'll have a few items. Obviously, we're stacked with some meetings here, so tomorrow morning, 8:30, you'll have your annual or biannual admin retreat, which we do when new council is seated, and that will be at Fire Station number 3. So we'll look forward to having a good discussion there tomorrow. Obviously, then before the council meeting, there will be a reception honoring Mayor McCaw's acceptance of the gavel, and then, of course, the council members Benning, Rodriguez, and Humphrey. So that's a community reception, so there should be quite a few people there. So
That's at 4 o'clock, Chuck, or?
3:30.
3:30?
3:30, yeah, that should give us enough time there. So, and that's always a very nice event. A reminder that city offices will be closed in observance of Martin Luther King Jr. Day next Monday. And then the 2 meetings on the 24th and 26th, mark to be determined. I know that staff will be out of town that week, but we're also not seeing any agenda items as well. So the combination of those 2 things may result in those meetings being postponed then. We'll have a CCOM board meeting Thursday morning prior to your Thursday meeting. So, of course, staffing's been an issue. I've had some pretty good news regarding both recruitment in the police department, although we always seem to get retirements or something that come up and eat away at those. But recruiting has gone very well in PD, and we have some good news on recruiting at CCOM as well. So some positive things there. We are in a tight spot on transit right now, and we're operating under reduced hours since we had like 4 people leave all at once, primarily for health or family-related issues. So we're scrambling to hire there so we can get back on schedule. So if you hear about that, that's what's going on with that. So that's all we have right now. The conference room downstairs is under construction for upgrades. So you'll see a lot of stuff going on there, but hopefully we'll have a much better place for meetings and audio visuals when that's finished. So Mayor McCaw, that's all I have. Happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, sir. Is there any questions for the city manager?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Move that to our next agenda item 2. Mr. Rodriguez. Any discussion on item 2? Matter of fact, I will abstain from item 2, voting because I wasn't here when that was presented.
Okay.
All right.
New business.
Okay. Go to new business. Discussions on item number 3.
Only thing I'd like to say is congratulations, Ms. Humphrey.
Congratulations. Wow, not yet. We got to be approved first. You know.
Well, how are you going to vote there, Benning?
She brings some steak dinner, she might. No, congratulations.
Thank you.
She gave you that eye.
Get that wave.
All right. All right.
He's used to it.
The next item will go to public hearing. We'll go to Mr. Benning for that, which will,
Ms.
which is
Wilson.
a staff report.
Yeah.
Item number 4. And go to Ms. Laura Wilson. Hey, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor,
you,
members
ma'am.
of council. The item before you this evening is a request to add some definitions and some language to chapters 94 of our city code of ordinances and also chapter 90. Within the chapter 94, the Parks and Recreation Commission is requested to add specific definitions for the types of parks that we have in our inventory within our city limits, which will further explain the purposes and intended uses of these parks. In particular, with the athletic courts and fields, there are some restrictions, like animals are not permitted on those areas. This also further defines what is available to be rented and what is not, what's a first come, first served, like our neighborhood parks. Language was also included within this chapter, which addressed the use of e-bikes within the confines of our park trail systems. So there's been a lot of lively discussion in the commission about the use of electrical bicycles. And so their original request was that it would set a speed limit of 15 miles per hour on our trail systems in order to cover those. But upon further research, it was discovered that Arizona Revised Statute 28219 actually states that e-bikes and also electrical scooters are afforded all the rights and privileges of a person that is riding a bicycle. So that would mean that they are permitted on the trail system, but it specifically says that those that law applies to class 1 and 2 electrical bicycles and does not permit class 3. So the thing about the class 1 and 2s is that those are restricted to run at under 20 miles per hour. And there are no speedometers on those bicycles, so it would be hard for someone who's riding to self-govern themselves in order to have an actual posted speed limit. So we are recommending language that would actually match the law, restrict class 3 e-bikes, and because the original intent of the commission was to govern the speed, 20 miles per hour isn't that far off of the recommended 15 and is already taken care of by the way that the bicycles are designed. So in order to do that, we just recommended the language that would keep us in line with state law and prohibit the class 3 electrical bicycles on the trails. The chapter 90 edit is a small edit, and that actually is a minor language edit to chapter 90 because it had it listed that the sanctioning of events was actually the commission when it actually is the department head. So it changes that language. There were no other changes there. If you approve this request, it would start the 30-day review process. We would come back to you after 30 days and let you know what any of the public comments were received, and then it would come back to you for a vote. And I'd be happy to answer any of your questions.
Thank you, ma'am. Questions for Ms. Laura? Yes, sir. Mr. Rodriguez, Councilman Mark Rodriguez.
Oh, thank you. Just real quick, just so everybody knows, so how would this be enforced, right? Class 3 and scooters, what's the process there, so everybody knows out there, if they're on a trail and they see a Class 3 bike and they can point it out, which, I don't know, I mean, if they're going at 20 miles an hour, you have to have some pretty good eyes, or just no bikes in general. So just how would that be enforced, and what's going to be the procedure if somebody does not obey the law?
I think that Mr. Cosmeyer could probably help me with this, but I would imagine just from like our other ordinances in our parks, like the dog park, for example, if there's an issue in a park of any kind, by the time our law enforcement gets there, a lot of times the people or whatever's going on is kind of disbanded, and it's very difficult. So I would imagine that having something posted would be, in the case if something did happen, that could be an additional violation, but John, you might.
Yes, thank you. Mr. Mayor, members of council, I think that would be on a complaint basis, most likely, is how it would be enforced. And that would be if we were able to make contact with the person. And initially with things like that, we would start with warnings, of course, and recommendations. But my understanding is the bikes are supposed to be pretty clearly labeled as to what classification they are. And if it's a class 3 bike, which by this would not be allowed on the trails, then that would be a fairly easy thing to tell the folks, hey, you can't have this particular type of bike on the trail system. But typically, early on, at least, it would be based on kind of warnings and public information would be the initial way we would try to enforce that.
Okay, thanks. Yes, sir.
I don't agree with the discrimination against people that invest in an e-bike, and it's a class 3, and they use it for transportation as well as recreation. I think self-enforcement would be the way to go on this thing, rather than telling somebody with a $1,500 or $2,000 e-bike that you can't use the trail. It doesn't make any sense to me.
And we discussed that a lot at Parks and Rec, and that was one of the biggest things that we did discuss is saying you can't have this bike on this trail. And I think what Ms. Wilson and the Parks and Rec Commission actually came up with, it eliminates some of the fears of having a 30-mile-per-hour bike on a trail that's not meant for that. And then the biggest issue of any of it is the response time from, okay, I called the police because you have the wrong bike.
Well, look at
It's
the
a tough one, and I
look at
agree
the
with you.
speeding
That
on
was-
Fry Boulevard sometime and
I
say,
agree.
okay, you're
And-
not supposed to
Agreed.
over.
And it was, like I said, it was one of the biggest things we discussed was, do we eliminate people who may not be able to ride a bicycle on one of our trails just because of age, other issues they may or may not have? Do we discriminate from them and not let them do anything? And
Is it-
this ultimately is what the Parks and Rec recommends,
And is it not already in state statute?
and it
You
is.
can't.
Yeah.
Actually, Mr. Mayor, members of council, one of the discussion points on here as well, and if you read the statute, it looks to me like the Arizona state law is actually treating a class 3 bike like you would a small scooter
Yeah.
or another vehicle. So I believe that is probably the distinction that they're trying to make, and vehicles are not permitted on our trail systems at all. And if you even go back and look at the national parks and recreation, their recommendations, they also restrict the use of class 3s.
Thank you.
Yeah, a lot of them get up to 45, 50 miles per hour, and that's,
You had your hand up, Council.
Okay. Are we gonna have to update our signage for all the trail? Like, are we
Well,
having to change?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Humphrey, not necessarily to change them, but we will add on our trail system, like Garden Canyon Linear Park is really the trail that we're discussing here. So on those entry points, we will be posting those, that way in case law enforcement ever does need to enforce, they'll be able to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions, comments?
I just want to thank Parks and Rec for taking the time, take this on and looking into it thoroughly. And the state law helps a lot, so I just appreciate all their time.
Okay, thank you. So we move to the next item, call to the public. And then we'll have comments and requests of the council, then adjournment. That is it. Let's see. All right. Then we go to Bravo, report on recent trips, meetings, and future meetings. And Charlie, which is, I want to get my military. Item C, future discussions, items, and council requested, then adjournment.
So, yeah, this is today.
What's bid on any?
So we start with B,
Yeah,
and then we'll,
So I have to ask.
yeah, if anyone's been on the
Okay,
report, so.
thank you. So has anybody on the council been in reports of recent trips, meetings, and future meetings?
we have the, mayor-manager luncheon on the 18th, and then, the State Transportation Board meeting on the 20th will be in these chambers at 9 a.m. And, I think it's been a few years since they've come down here, so it's, they're starting to go around the state again, since COVID. And, I know it's important because they determine our transportation funding for ADOT and the 5-year plan for the state highway system. So just want to put that on everyone's radar that they'll be in town on Thursday night too, and the meeting will be here. And there's a call to the public at 9 a.m., right at the beginning of the meeting. If anyone has to
Thank you,
say
Councilman.
anything.
Thank you, Councilman. And I will be in Tucson at the Fort Huachuca Strategic Meeting, so Councilmember Humphreys will
Yes, I'll
come
be
represent
here.
us. Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So we did, and all council was, I think all council was there. We had our legislative meeting with Representatives Lopez, Diaz, sorry,
Yeah, Lupe.
and Representative Griffin. Senator Gowan couldn't make it, and then our tri-advocates were there. So it was a good meeting. We presented some things. Staff presented some of their issues and some of the things they wanted the legislature to look up, and so did council. And it was a good meeting, so I just wanted to let the public know that we are meeting with our legislators. We have a way ahead for this year, and it was a good meeting.
Excellent. Thank you.
I want to add something. The State Transportation Board meetings, there will also be a district update for our ADOT road. Yeah, so I know because we get asked about it all the time. There should be an update on 90 in there.
I hope so.
You know, just if they do, there's a stream for if you can't like make it in person. Their website has a number and a way to dial in online, so you can see and hear what's going on if you can't be there in person. Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay. So, item C, Victoria, are there any future discussion items?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Right now, I've got boards and commissions in the queue, that discussion. We're going to include that on the meeting agenda for tomorrow, though, to make sure council is ready to move forward as we discussed in November.
Ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Any other questions for Victoria? Yes, go ahead, sir.
Tomorrow, can we discuss doing a nonprofit during a work session like we used to do, where we had a nonprofit come?
I will add that to a future work session
Okay.
agenda.
I
Mr.
appreciate
Bennett.
it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, just a comment. I received a call from a gentleman by the name of Radford Hyde, who had applied probably in September to the Library Commission. And he was told to, cool his tracks because they weren't going to meet in December because of the council discussing the various commissions. And I had asked staff to call him to give him an update as to what was actually going on, because he was quite concerned. He said, well, maybe I joined the wrong commission because other commissions are meeting and we have 3 this month. So he called me again yesterday and was quite upset that he and a friend wanted to be on the Library Commission, but were told that City Council had not made any decisions on this and kind of laid the blame on the folks up here on the dais. And I was a little upset with that because we had been discussing it in a work session, and it wasn't the fault of City Council for not meeting. It was the fault that we hadn't discussed the new realignment. So I just wanted to make that present known, and I told Mr. Hyde I would bring it up today, but it was just merely an information point that, we have people that want to serve on commissions that are being told that it's up to the City Council to do something. So I don't know how we're going to fix this. So hopefully we're going to be discussing this tomorrow.
Yes, you
And
will.
we can hash this thing out.
Yeah, well, there is a proposal on the table, as was discussed in November.
Right.
And I think it just needs a little massaging and discussion to finalize that, and hopefully library will be a part of that. So,
Right. Well, he had mentioned to me, he said, I see on the schedule that there's 3 commissions this month that are meeting. Why isn't the Library Commission meeting? Because he wanted to get started. So just for the record, I wanted to make that comment.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Well noted, and we will speak about it tomorrow. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Roger that. So next item, future, any council request? All right, so the third is adjournment. That's it.
All right, thank you.
so much.
Easy on you.